So my mains name and the kind of name I unfortunately go by in the community is Heathspliff. I only planned to play E for a few weeks until Tears of the Kingdom came out, and here I am a couple of years later, very much involved in the community. Volume's a bit low. Let me see if adjust that a little bit. I don't have the best headset in the world, I'm afraid, but I've tried to move it a bit closer to my mouth. So sorry if you need to turn your speakers up. I'll try and project my voice as much as possible. I He isn't in any faction warfare. It's kind of like a general purpose character. In Garistas, which is my main faction for faction warfare, my character is King Trumpet, and that's what I do for the Garistas arm of that's what I use for the Garistas arm of Eve Rookies. So I started off in Highsec, I guess, like we all do. Went out to Nullsec for a bit, wasn't really for me, and then came back. I've basically been around Highsec and kind of day tripping into Lowsec and Nullsec ever since. And by just a series of accidents, I've ended up being a fleet commander for Eve Rookies and a teacher for them as well. And I am terrible at PvP, but I'm making good ISK off doing this. I'm winning some fights now and again. So if I can do this, like you definitely can. So an overview of the class. This seems to be a subject which there's a lot of mystery around. People don't really know where to start, especially with pirate faction warfare, over faction warfare in general. So I want to demystify that and provide a road to getting involved with this in-game activity. It is a PvP activity, primarily, with a little bit of PvE on the side. So it takes place in Lowsec, and sometimes spills out into Highsec as well. It's primarily a low-sec activity. And it's about fighting other players, but it's also about completing objectives as well. And there are some rats as well. They work a little bit differently, and they're kind of just more for annoyance compared to normal ratting, but they are there. And both Empire, it's called, people call it pirate faction warfare, but to be clear, both Empire and pirate enlisted players can participate. So you can enlist in any of the empires and get involved. You can enlist in Garistas, you can enlist in Angels, in the pirate sides, and you can do this. With the Empire side, you get the best of both worlds, I suppose, because you get to do normal faction warfare and Insurgencies faction warfare, pirate faction warfare as well, whereas pirates only get Insurgencies, though there are some benefits to being on the pirate side as well. And the long and short of it is, much like the rest of faction warfare in Eve, it's based around these capture point sites, I guess you would call them. So what you do is you enter a site, and the site is like temporary. It's like a combat anomaly. It spawns, there's an objective, you complete it, and it despawns. And what you do is you camp out on that plex, and that's short for complex, not to be confused with plex. That will really get you with faction warfare. When people are talking about plexes, they're talking about complexes, not the in-game currency plex. So you camp out on that plex, and a timer starts running down. When the timer reaches 0, you get a payout of loyalty points of your faction, and those loyalty points can be used to buy stuff, which is in turn sold for ISK. That's how you make your money, primarily anyway. There are some other ways, and that is the same both with faction warfare and Insurgencies. There's some other types of sites too, which work a little bit differently, and we'll get into them as well. But that is the long and short of it. And the idea is that these plexes are like a choke point. So both factions, or rather all three factions, 3 per war zone. They're fighting over these plexes, and you want to keep control of it. You want to fight over other players. Maybe there's a pilot in a plex you want to take. You're gonna go and have a fight with them, try and kick them out. That's how it works. So they're kind of like like a choke point, which sort of funnels enemy pilots together. There are 2 insurgencies at any one time. One for Garistas pirates and one for Angels pirates. So the Garistas insurgency is part of the Caldari Galente faction warfare war zone, and the Angels insurgency will spawn somewhere in the Amar Minmatar war zone. So you wouldn't have a Garista fighting an Angel because you're kind of separated out into the 2 war zones. And insurgencies, they start off small and they grow out as time goes on. We'll go into more detail about that, how that happens, and it's generally on a 2-week cycle from when the insurgency spawns through to when it despawns. A key mechanic to insurgencies is corruption and suppression. We'll go into more detail about that, but essentially that is the overall points you accrue for your side, corruption for pirates and suppression for the Empire sides, which have certain benefits to you as things go on. We'll go into more detail about that. So we'll just go through a list of differences between normal faction warfare and insurgencies. So faction warfare is ongoing. There is a war zone, like a set number of systems, and there's kind of like a sort of tug of war. One side will take some territory, then lose some territory, and then take some territory. It runs 24/7, 365 days of the year, and will keep going until the servers are turned off. Insurgencies are temporary. Like I say, they're on a 2-week cycle, so they do start, they progress, then they end, and then you have, in total, I believe it's a 48-hour cooldown until the next one. Faction warfare is generally lower risk and lower reward. You can get away with cheaper ships, and we'll go into more detail about why that is. So it can be quite a good place to start. If you really want to do pirate faction warfare, by all means head there straight away. But some people might want to just try normal faction warfare first. Whereas insurgencies, people are flying blingier ships, but the insurgency sites, on average, do pay out a good bit more than faction warfare sites. It's higher risk, blingier ships, but higher reward, more LP. So faction warfare has navy and advanced sites. That's NVY and ADV, where insurgencies only have ADV. So faction warfare, with navy sites, the NVY, they allow any ships of the right size up to the navy tier. So essentially that's T1 and navy. So in general, they are cheaper ships. You've got some advanced sites as well in faction warfare, and they allow any size of ship in. Any tier of ship in for that size. So a medium advanced site would let any cruiser in, except the T3 cruiser, because they're an exception, but it will allow any T2 and pirate ship in. Whereas the insurgencies only have advanced sites. So you're going to find that insurgencies, people, like I say, are flying blingier ships because they can fly T2 ships, they can fly Garista faction ships, they can fly Mordu faction ships, because there are only advanced sites which let any tier in. So, but again, blingier ships. Faction warfare, you've got these navy sites, and they can be really good because the best ship you can get into them is a navy tier ship. Let's let you say the Caldari Navy Hookbill, for example. So you've got a better chance against someone who's got a T2 ship, for example. Maybe they've got a Hawk because they can't even get into the site. So that's another reason why faction warfare is generally lower risk. Faction warfare has scout plexes, whereas insurgency doesn't. So a scout plex is a plex which allows in a frigate, and that's it, nothing bigger than that. So in faction warfare, there's a lot more of a meta towards frigates, and people have written extensively about the balance of different navy frigates in faction warfare. There's, I think if you Google like Eve, like the frigate faction warfare yearbook, there's like this. I'm not sure who it is, but they put out a report each year. Insurgencies don't have any scout plexes. The smallest plex in Insurgency is small, and small is destroyer. So nothing bigger than a destroyer can get in. So ultimately, the effect of this is the meta for faction warfare is more frigates, especially navy frigates, whereas the meta for insurgencies is more destroyers and cruisers, and it's more pirate faction ships and T2 ships. There are exceptions, but generally that's the direction the meta goes in. I said before how there are other types of sites as well as plexes. In faction warfare, you've also got battlefields, which are they're like sort of 3 plexes in one, and there's a lot more rats, and you kind of fight over you're trying to capture these three plexes. There aren't any of those insurgencies. There are advanced 10, which are, we call them mining sites. So it's something like mining extortion site. We'll go into that. And we've got advanced 30 sites, which are the ice heist. As the name suggests, those 2 sites are suggested to be completed by 10 and 30 pilots respectively. In the insurgencies, when a system gets to corruption 5, and we'll go into more detail about that in a future slide, when a system gets into corruption 5, which is in low sec, you can use bubbles. There are no bubbles because of faction warfare. However, because the systems overlap, you can have faction warfare and insurgencies in the same system. You might find a faction warfare system which is corruption 5 with bubbles in, and bubbles, is that's usually done from an interdiction destroyer, and that is like a massive bubble where you can't warp out of. It works in much the same way as a warp disruptor, but it's like an air effect thing, so essentially you're kind of stuck in place. So with insurgencies, what you'll find a lot more is that you will get podded. In faction warfare, when there's no bubbles, really, as long as you warp out quickly enough, you should always be able to get away. But in insurgencies, there's more bubbles because of corruption 5 system, so you will lose pods. So in faction warfare, you might find that people go out and bling your pods than they do in insurgencies, where in insurgencies, they're not really wanting to do that because, you're going to lose it sooner or later in a bubble, because you can't just warp out of a bubble. It sticks you in place much the same way as it would in a ship. Which I quite like, to be honest. Because I think it makes fights more even. So here's the 3 different types of sites in the insurgencies. There's the corporate outpost raid, which is a plex. When I've been referring to a plex before, like a capture point, that's what I'm talking about. And these are the sites that you're most commonly going to be, what you're going to be doing. You can put an interdiction nullifying your ship. There's not many ships that will allow you to use an interdiction nullifier, which gets you out of bubbles. And there are some. It does sort of affect some of the stats. So For moving around, yeah, you could use an interdiction nullifier, but I wouldn't want to be plexing with an interdiction nullifier because it's going to hold you back in a fight. And these corporate outpost raid, these plexes, they come in 4 different sizes, and the size of the plex controls what size ship you can get in. So small is destroyers and below, medium is cruisers and below, large is battle cruisers below, and open doesn't have like a gate on it to control it. So any ship can get in. So that means if you're only flying a destroyer, you can do small plexes and you're not going to have a cruiser get in. Again, that way you have more even fights. These, like I said before, they're all advanced sites that any tier of ship can get in. However, T3 ships have to go one size up. So, T3 destroyers have to go to a medium site, whereas T3 cruisers have to go to a large site. You don't see that many of them. T3 destroyers, you don't see many T3 cruisers. It's a bit expensive for this. Mining Op Ambush is a PvPvE site. There's a lot more rats. You want to have, I would say, at least 5 destroyers. Your payout doesn't get diminished at all, up to 10 people, so you're as good. You're going to get as much LP each as having 10 people as you would for 5. So generally, the more the merrier. And the rats are actually dangerous in a mining up ambush, so you want to be careful. Usually, I'll kind of warp in, even when I'm F-seeing a fleet, we'll usually warp in about 70 kilometers away and then sort of gradually go and aggro the rats because they will get you. So it's much about fighting other players as it is fighting the rats with that site. And then at the end, assuming you win, you get quite a big chunky LP payout. The Ice Refinery heist is like an escort mission. So if you're on the pirate side, what you're doing is you're escorting NPC haulers from a certain point to an objective, and one ship has to stop what they're doing. They can't use their weapons, I believe, and they have to escort the NPC hauler. Whereas the other side, they're going to be trying to stop you. Again, there's a lot of rats. You don't have to kill the rats, but you kind of have to kill them just because otherwise they can overwhelm you. And again, they are for up to 30 pilots. You can do it in less, especially if you're in bigger ships, but that is the recommendation. Again, though, for the most part, you're going to find that you're doing the corporate outpost raid, the Plex sites more than anything, and those sites work just the same way as the Plex is doing faction warfare. So corruption and suppression is it's gained when you complete an objective. So each system in Insurgency has a number that they're called corruptions at and suppressions at. When you complete a site on the pirate side, corruption goes up a little bit, and when you complete a site on the Empire side, then suppression goes up a bit. And as the corruption suppresses increases up these 5 different levels, different types of effects take hold. So, on the pirate side, you get a better drop rate from PvP. On the suppression side, you get more LP and better, NPC bounties. But the main ones that you want to be thinking about is at corruption level 3, the insurgency will spread to adjacent systems up to, I think it's 0.6 security, so it can't go any higher than that. But that does mean that if a low sec system adjacent to a high sec system gets to corruption 3, as long as the high sec system is lower than 0.7 security, it will then spread into high sec. And even more importantly than that, and if there's one thing you're going to remember from this slide, I'd say let this be it. At corruption 5, high sec essentially becomes low sec, and low sec becomes null sec. So what that means is, in Corruption 5 low-sec system, you can use bubbles. So you'll find in these Corruption 5 systems, there's bubbles everywhere. People are doing gate camps. They're putting bubbles up in plexes to sort of capture an enemy fleet. You can use bombs as well. I've never actually seen anyone do that, but you can do. And on the other hand, in high sec, if it becomes Corruption 5, high sec essentially becomes low sec. The Concord will no longer come out for ship kills. So in a Corruption 5 high sec system, you can destroy a ship and not get the punishment from Concord. Now, the gate guns will still get you, and you will get concorded for destroying a pod. But like I say, they won't come out for a ship kill. So essentially it turns it into low sec, but someone asked this last time, you can't light a Sino, unfortunately, in a high sec Corruption 5 system. You can't Sino in a capital, that's one thing that you can't do, but apart from that, it very much becomes similar to low sec, except you still have Concord, albeit only for pod kills. So like I say, the other bonuses, they're nice to have. So on the suppression side, and you get like a 10% bonus to Weber and Scrambler range. Honestly, when I look at a system, all I'm really looking at is it Corruption 5 or not? So these insurgencies are on a 2-week cycle. Like I say, temporary, they don't last forever. And one side, well, either one side wins or there's a draw. That's how it ends. And the way that either side wins is different depending on which side we're dealing with. So for the pirates to win, all they need to do is have a set number of systems become Corruption 5. So they have to, in the number of certain number of systems, complete enough objectives to gain corruption, so that that system is Corruption 5 and it's captured for them. It's hit the highest amount of corruption possible. For empires, it's a bit more complicated. They have to do two things. They first have to capture a certain number of systems, and then they need to destroy the pirate forward operating base. And what that is essentially a base for the pirate side. It's connected. There's a gate from Zarzakh. So it's easy access from Zarzakh because it's only one way for the pirate side, and it works much like an upwell structure. You can dock in it. You can leave your stuff there, though be careful because they could ultimately get blown up. And the FOB becomes vulnerable to attack when the Empire side has captured enough systems. So eventually it'll become vulnerable. The first reinforcement layer will be taken down, and then I believe there's a 24-hour timer until the final battle over the forward operating base. So if you look on the right-hand side, you can see this map of an insurgency. This is the Guristas, Caldari, Galente Warzone insurgency. It looks like a bit of a mess, but you'll find that you get used to looking at these maps. What the rings represent is the corruption and suppression in each system. So the green represents how much corruption there is, the white represents how much suppression there is. And you can see the scorecard down on the bottom right, and you can see that the pirates need to capture 18 systems, whereas the Empire side only needs to capture 7. The reason for that is we've got the ambition modifier. So when one side wins, they get a disadvantage in the next insurgency, and because Guristas have been winning a lot, they now have to capture 18 systems to win, whereas the Empire side only needs to capture 7 to have a shot at destroying the forward operating base. and winning. So the FOB, it doesn't spawn diamond rats. There are rats that spawn in the Insurgency. They're a bit weaker than diamond rats. They're probably a bit weaker than normal ratting sites to be honest. And they do kind of fly around. You can fight them. You can get like these items from them, but no one really does that. So I'm not even going to get into it. But yeah, the forward operating base, apart from the name, pretty much operates differently to the NPC forward operating base you might be familiar with. So yeah, no diamond rats, which is a good thing to be honest. Diamond rats can be a bit of a pain. So, assuming one side wins and it doesn't go to draw, because eventually if time runs out, then neither side wins. The side that wins gets a little bit of ISK. So if you've been doing, every other day for the course of the Insurgency, you've been doing a bit of plexing, you've been out in the Insurgency, you'll get about 100 million ISK at the end if you win. Like a little, I think you still get a bit if you lose as well. So it's a nice extra, but it's not anywhere near your main source of income. It's more kind of for pride more than anything else. They might change these mechanics a bit to make winning a bit more meaningful, but that's at least how it works at the minute. So, how do you get involved with this? Because this is what I've found, that people just really don't know where to start. So, we'll get into this. The first recommendation I have for you is create a new character. There's really good reasons for that. First of all, you're going to be enlisted in a faction warfare militia. That means that you can be attacked by the enemy side anywhere. Even in high sec, Concord won't come out to protect you because it's your war decked. It's fair kill. A lot of fleets won't let you join. Like with Eve Rookies, we don't let anyone who's enlisted in faction warfare join fleets, just incursion fleets, because it's risky, because they can be openly attacked, and it does affect your standings a bit as well. So my recommendation is to create a new character for faction warfare, regardless to what side you're on. You can do this with an alpha account. That's what most people, I would say, do. So you can just create a brand new account, use someone's referral to get the 1 million free skill points, and then with that, you can inject into with the skill points, you could get yourself into like a frigate or destroyer straight away within the first few days, and then you could grow that character, maybe upgrade that account to Omega at some point as well. You could use the character slot on your existing account if you've got one. However, then you've got to think about, you don't get the 1 million free skill points. You don't get training unless you use a training certificate, which obviously is paid for. So that's what most people do for this. They create an alpha account, create a new character, and they only use that character for doing faction warfare. There is a standing requirement to enlist in a faction warfare side. So for the Empire side, you need 0 and above. So if you've been doing like missions against accepting security missions against another Empire, that will decrease your standings with them. Maybe if you've been doing faction warfare on the other side, that will decrease your standings. So you need to check that, and again, it's another good reason to create a new character. The Angel sides are a bit more lenient. They will allow you to be up to -2 in standings with them. So even if you're in -1, -1.5, you're fine to get in. But it can easily slip. If you've been using this character for ratting, that will wreck your standings, whichever pirate side is. So if you've been ratting and doing missions against Garistas, you're probably not going to have very good Garistas standings. They can be repaired, but I say just create a new character. Yeah, we'll just looking at the chat. We'll talk about a waxing. We'll get into that. So you'll create a new character. Hopefully, your standings are okay. What should you skill into? You want to get at least one T2 weapon system. Be that drones, blasters, autocannons. I quite like artillery. The reason for that being is T1 weapons will not allow you to kill the rats which hang out in the plexes. So plexes, usually it's 3 rats spawn at one time, so you have to kill them before you can start capturing the site. And they don't do much damage, but they do have quite strong tanks. So you need at least a T2 weapon system to be able to overcome that. You shouldn't need an Omega account for T2 small weapons. So we're talking about small blasters, small pulse lasers, rockets, light missiles. T2 ships you would, but small T2 weapons you can have them with Alpha. You'll be okay. So yeah, you want to have one T2 weapon system of your preference. And I would say for Insurgencies, I would skip over Frigate and go straight into a Destroyer. I'd put your skill points into getting Racial Destroyer 4, so that might be a Mars Destroyer, it might be Caldari Destroyer, and I would get yourself a Navy Destroyer. I think that's a really good starting ship. Like I say, there are no scout sites, so there's not much of a frigate meta with Insurgencies, so you might as well have the higher firepower and tank of a destroyer. So then you need to enlist. In the Empire side, that's relatively straightforward, and the Empire side, they've got stations all over high sec that you can enlist at, and low sec as well. With the pirate side, it's a bit more complicated. They have stations for you to enlist at, but they're out in nullsec. Now, what you used to be able to do is go to Zarzakh, then do one jump out to either Angel or Garista nullsec, enlist, and then jump back again. Unfortunately, they have this thing that I call it reverse polarization, where when you go in to Zarzakh with one gate, you've got to either go out of the same gate or wait 6 hours. So what you might want to do is either just fly out to nullsec in a shuttle, with an empty pod in case you get smart bombed or something, enlist and then come back, or you can fly out to Zarzakh via the low sec route, so that's Turner or Al Savoyden, and you can sort of hang out there for 6 hours, log off, log back in 6 hours later, and then it's just one jump out to either Angel or Garista's nullsec. The other way to enlist is to just join a corp that's enlisted at the corp level. So when the Evruk is Garista Insurgency people join, because our corp is enlisted, Rabbit Rebellion is enlisted, they become enlisted automatically, so it's a bit easier if you do it that way. And you want to pick a staging location, and that is going to be your home base where you keep your ships. So when you get blown up, you fly back there, or maybe self-destruct your pods, and because you've said it is your home system, you go back there. Now, where do you put your staging location? Zarzakh's an option for the pirate side. We'll go into more detail about that. There's low sec. A lot of people do low sec because the faction warfare happens in low sec. The insurgency does move around, so you're not always going to be close. But if you put yourself, for example, if you're in the Angel insurgency, if you put yourself somewhere in the Minmatar Amar war zone, you're never going to be that far away. The disadvantage is you still need to think about getting your ships in. So if you're going to be staged in low sec, you want to be thinking about either training a character into using like a blockade runner or a deep space transport to bring fitted ships. Sorry, no, you don't want to bring. You want to bring assembled ships in which you then bust the fittings and ammo for them. Alternatively, you can use a courier company. They won't deliver to any low sec station, but courier companies like Red Frog, it's one of the frogs that does low sec. I'm not sure which is. Red Frog might be one of the one that does null sec. I'm not sure, but Push X as well. They will deliver to Zarzakh. They will deliver to certain locations in low sec. So you pay them some S. If you buy some ships in Jita, for example, probably the best place to do it. And then you pay a courier company to drop them off in low sec for you. It is a bit of an upfront expense, but it means your ships are always there. What about a staging location in high sec? Why not just stage out of Jita, for example? Usually you'll get away with it, and it's really convenient having the market right there. However, remember, like I said before, when you are enlisted, you can be attacked by the enemy side anywhere in high sec. So you do have some people that sit outside Jita, and they will sit outside the other market hubs, and they will wait for an enemy enlisted player to undock, and they will scram and blow them up. Shoot one shot them with an attack battle cruiser, for example. So it's staging out of a high sec market isn't really the safest way to do it. You could sort of do like a happy medium, maybe find a system a few jumps away from a high sec market, just on the precipice between high sec and low sec, and then you should use like a separate character. You could do it in the T1 hauler. Just be careful. Give it a bit of hull, a bit of armor or shield, and probably a bit of can't hurt to give it some hull modules as well. Keep it safe until Concord arrives. Well, what you'll find is sooner or later you want to be dropping off a number of ships at your staging location in one go. So that means either trading a character into a T2 hauler or freighter, or using a courier company to do that. So that's the advantages and disadvantages of staging out of those places. We'll go more into Zarzakh later because that's a sort of special consideration. Honestly, I don't think it's that. If you're just starting out and you're just in cheap ships anyway, stage out of Amara or Jita, they'll get you sometimes on the undock, but just for the convenience when you're learning, that really can't hurt. But don't do that forever. Make a plan to start staging out of ideally Hot Zarzakh or a low sec system. And when you got your staging location, you want to fit some ships. So with Insurgencies, like I say, the meta is more towards blingier ships because there's only advanced sites. Any tier of the right size can get in. So I would say at a minimum, you want to be looking at a pirate frigate like a Worm, Gusta's Worm, or T2 frigate, like a Hawk, or a Navy destroyer, which actually works out as a bit cheaper than a pirate frigate. So again, Navy destroyers I think are really good for this when you're starting out. So you might want to buy 5 ships with the fittings, with the ammo. So leave them at your staging location, so that as soon as you get blown up, you can just go and grab another ship in your pods. I've got a jump freighter now and another character, and they drop off all my ships at Al Savoyton, and then I do the last jump into Zarzakh in a DST. And obviously that's a big upfront expense, and not everyone's going to do that, but I drop off, a month's worth of ships at a time, plus the handouts for Eve Rookers as well, whilst I'm at it. And an expert system, so when you're doing the career missions, which you should do if you're going to create a new character, which is recommended, at the end of the Enforcer and Soldier of Fortune, so the PV and PvP career missions, you get given an expert system which will give you some pretty good skills to kind of tide you over. So I would say create a new alpha character, run the career missions, get those 2 expert systems, and then use them maybe over a weekend. You can go out plexing, you can go out fighting, getting some experience. Those expert systems will give you a bit of a boost until your training catches up. Fitting guidelines for doing this. Like I said before, I would recommend starting with a T2 frigate or a pirate frigate, or at least a Navy destroyer, and definitely with a T2 weapon system. Now, you will see people out in the Insurgencies kind of hanging around in, T1 ships. To be honest, they're not there to take part in this, content in any constructive way. They're just farming. If anyone turns up, they won't fight you, they'll just fly away. And I'm not, if you want to do that, it's up to you, but I'm not going to be involved in anyone just, farming and isn't interested in, making this actually fun rather than just getting the LP and then that's it. So, if you want to be able to hold just owning a fight in Insurgencies, you want to be looking at, slightly blingier ships. So the Navy Destroyer is your cheapest way to get into that. Don't forget to use a tackle module, because, if you get the upper hand in a fight, obviously you want to keep your enemy in place. And if you don't tackle them, and they get away, they're probably going to come back in a reship into something better, or they know what fit you're using now, and the second time round the fight probably won't go your way. So make sure you equip a warp scrambler or warp disruptor. There's a couple of different overall fitting approaches which have their own subdivisions, but generally you'll get kite fits, and they rely on range control. So they rely on getting as far away as your opponent as possible, and holding them there. Whereas brawl fits are more about being very close to your enemy, having auto cannons, blasters, pulse lasers, weapons that do like a lot of damage up close, and using that close range to your advantage. My advice is, with a low SP character, low skill point character, is to use a kite fit. The reason being is that if you can keep an enemy at range, it doesn't matter that their skills are so much better than yours. If you can kite them, you can still win. So when I started out, I'd use an artillery Thrasher fleet issue quite a lot. I would do scram kiting, and that's where you kite them at about 8,000 kilometers, sort of warp scrambler range. So you use a warp scrambler and a web that turns off the micro warp drive, that turns off, that slows them, otherwise slows them down. And even if they're like a Catalyst Navy issue, there's blasters that do loads of damage, if you can keep them at 8 kilometers, you're going to win the fight, because they're not going to be able to do damage from that far away. You can also kite with a micro warp drive and a warp disruptor. Warp disruptor goes out a lot further, and that is, what you're trying to do is not even let the enemy tackle you at all. You want to get so far away with micro warp drive that you can, if they get closer, you can outrun them. So that works especially well in frigates, doing like a micro warp drive kite. So in faction warfare, you'll find that afterburners are used quite a lot. There are advantages and disadvantages to both, as always. Nullsec seems to be more about micro warp drive. Faction warfare afterburners are a lot more common. One of the reasons for that is that if someone gets a warp scrambler on you, your micro warp drive turns off, so it's no use, you're kind of dead in the water at that point. And with Insurgencies, faction warfare, you don't need to cover large distances, so the speed, might have an advantage of getting away from your opponent, but it doesn't have an advantage in terms of closing a distance. so much. So if you've got a warp scrambler and afterburner, as long as you can scramble an opponent with a micro warp drive, you can move fast. They can't move fast, or they're dead in the water, and you get complete range control over that engagement. Ideally, you'd have a fit that can damage out to 20 or 30 kilometers. This isn't essential, and it's definitely not realistic with a lot of fits and ships and weapon systems. But if you can do damage that far out, what it means is that you can kill the rats. And like I say, in the plexes, 3 or 5 rats spawn at a time, depending on what type of plex it is. And you do need to shoot them before the timer starts running down. And they can get up to about 30 kilometers away from you, depending on where you are in the plex. So if you can damage out that far, you'll find that that ship can plex a lot more efficiently, because the sooner you can kill the rats, the sooner the time starts running again. Unlike PvE, in faction warfare and Insurgencies, hull tanks actually work. Especially with frigates and destroyers, what essentially you do is you put a damage control in your lows, you put bulkheads in your rigs, and that actually gives you a really nice amount of effective hit points. And it's completely passive as well, so even if you get capped out, you get that hit points. So hull tanks can really work for these smaller ship fights. Though you've also got armor and shield as well. PvP generally is skewed towards armor, but shields, definitely have a big presence as well. And you can consider other types of E-war as well, as like tackle. So there's people using tracking disruptors. There's definitely a lot of capacitor warfare, because if your enemy's like in a blaster ship, for example, if you can cap them out, they can't even fire their weapons. Some ships are bonus for that, but it doesn't necessarily mean just because they're not bonus you shouldn't use E-War. I use T3 destroyers, and you can put a couple of tracking disruptors in the mids. T3 destroyers are quite a lot of CPU, and with a couple of tracking disruptors, with range scripts in, the enemy's really going to struggle to get the upper hand on you in terms of their optimal range. So you can kite them even from relatively close up. So you want to be thinking about, when you're fitting these ships, you want to be thinking about maybe using a bit of E-War as well. If you just want to know, I have no personal preference. I want what is the best ship for this. I personally really like the Garistas frigate and destroyer. That's the Worm and the Mamba respectively. The reason for that is that they are primarily drone ships. That means that you can clear away the rats easily. They've got missiles as well for like a bit extra DPS. And as well as being good for clearing away NPCs, they can both hold their own in a fight as well. So I would say, if you're just not sure what to fly, I would say train into Agrista's Worm, and then work your way up into Agrista's Mamba. It's a bit more expensive, but it's a destroyer, so it'll be able to hold its own in a lot more fights than the Worm can. And in Eve Rockers, that's what I recommend everyone does. But there's no right ship to use, and if you really want to try a certain ship, I'd say just go for it. Follow whatever you want to fly, really. So Zarzakh is a system which was added around the same time as Insurgencies, and it is a system connected to 4 points across New Eden. It's connected to Angel Nullsec. It's got a gate to Garista Nullsec. It's got a gate to the Amar Mimitar Warzone Interna. It's got a gate to the Caldara Galente Warzone in Alcivoiden. And the idea is it's like a haven for the pirate side, and it is only pirates who can use this. So it's Garistas and Angels. If you're enlisted in Empire, I'm not sure if I think maybe you can't even dock up. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure you even get the system if you're enlisted the Empire side. But no, only pirates are staging out of there. So if it's the Empire side, it's probably not going to come into. It's not going to come into the equation. If you're on the pirate side, I think it's worth considering. But it does have, as you can see here, pros and cons. So in Zarzakh, you've got the shipcaster, and unlike the Empire shipcaster, which no one uses, the Zarzakh shipcaster is actually good. It's connected to the two Insurgencies via the forward operating base, so you can travel in one jump from Zarzakh to the Garistas Insurgency or the Angel Insurgency. It's really convenient, and the shipcaster is not destructible either. It stays up for the length of the Insurgency. You've got really nice industry bonuses at Zarzakh. So if you're building an Angel or a Garista ship, both of which the blueprints for are available in Zarzakh, you get 70% off the time it takes to build something, and 6% off the materials required, which does make things a good bit cheaper. So before, when I said, I really recommend the Worm or the Mamba, you can build those from Zarzakh. You can buy the blueprints with your loyalty points. You can build them in Zarzakh with the industry bonuses. It's a really good way of buying those ships. And like I say, the LP stores, both the Angel and the Grista side, are in Zarzakh. There's another LP store in the forward operating base for each side as well. But usually most people, I think they're spending their LP in Zarzakh. You've got access to those multiple regions that I told you about. And the art assets are really cool in Zarzakh as well. It's a really pretty looking system. So in terms of cons, this, like I said, it's pirate only. We've got these reverse polarizing gates. So that's to prevent people sort of skipping across New Eden too easily. So if you come in through the Alsa Voiding gate, you've either got to wait 6 hours, go out of the same gate again, or use the shipcaster. So you can't, in a couple of jumps, travel from Grist and Nullsec to Angel and Nullsec anymore, unfortunately. The local market is bad in Zarzakh. I wouldn't rely on it to buy your ships there. You can get some bits, but there's going to be a lot of stuff in Zarzakh which straight up isn't available. There are some courier companies that will go to Zarzakh. So PushX, they do a DST service to Zarzakh. You pay them 150 million, which admittedly is quite a lot, but they will move a DST's worth of stuff, at their risk up to Zarzakh for you. So I think that's 150,000 meter cubed. So in that, you could fit like 15 destroyers, I guess or maybe 14 destroyers and fitting and ammo for the destroyers. You can get 25 frigates and ammo. If you, as long as you ship in assembled ships, and you spend you really fill up the space they give you, because just at least with PushX, it's a set amount that you can fit it in. You can get stuff relatively cheap up to Zarzakh if you use all the space in the ship that they send up there for you. So you can go to Jita, fill up fill up your hangar with 150,000 meters worth of stuff, contracted to PushX, obviously just refer to them for what the exact instructions are, and you can have like a month's worth of ships that way. It's I haven't used it myself because I do all the hauling myself, but it's an option to make up for the market being pretty bad there. Yeah, it is quite a lot more per destroyer. It's probably only really worth it if you're using T2 ships or like pirate tier ships. Otherwise, it does make a big difference to the cost. But what it does mean though is that you're not gonna get ganked outside of Jita. You're not going to spend all your time jumping backwards and forwards. You can set your home system to Zarzakh, go out on the ship, do some plexing. When you get blown up, self-destruct your pods, you're back in Zarzakh, and you're only one jump away from the insurgency. And time is money. So if you want convenience, Zarzakh might be the way to go. Can't say one way or another. There's advantages and disadvantages of doing, staging out of any location. So, how do you stay alive in the insurgency? Because really, we're all going to lose our ship sooner or later, but we want to at least make the money back from that ship. We want to make some decent profits. People are making their billions and potentially trillions if they're multi-boxing out in insurgency. So there's plenty of this to be made. But we want to maximize the ISK by staying alive. So, you want to check for gate camps. There is a website that I can never remember the name of. Eve Gate Camp Check. If you just Google that, Eve Gate Camp Check. So if you're traveling across the insurgency, you put in your destination, origin, station. Thank you. It's been posted in chat. You can. So you can set purchase potential on gates. The issue is that the insurgency moves around, so you could spend a while setting up purchase, which is where you set like a warp to point a couple of 100 kilometers above a gate to check if it's safe. The issue is because the insurgency moves, you do that, and then a week later the insurgency's gone somewhere else. If you've got the patience for it, go for it. To be honest, I haven't done it. I don't have the patience for it, but it would be very sensible. But yeah, at least use gate camp check. That will tell you if anyone's recently died on the gates to your destination. Use D-scan. So you don't want to be warping directly to a gate. In a Corruption 5 system, it might be bubbled. You can use your D-scan. What you can do is warp to a celestial that is near, let's say 5 AU away from the gate. You can use your D-scan, and that will tell you what ships are on the gates. If you're seeing interdiction destroyers, if you're seeing like a heavy interdiction cruiser, if you're seeing like a mobile, the mobile structure, which also, there's like a structure you can use for like a mobile tractor unit for creating bubbles. If you see any of that, you probably want to avoid that gate, because maybe it's your side, maybe it's not, but someone set up a bubble there and you don't want to get caught in it. You want to be in the militia chat. The militia chat is not amazing, but there is some intel in there. It's not as good as intel as in like a nullsec alliance intel chat, but some is worth having it up, because people will say that there is gate camp here, it's bubbled up here, there's there's a huge fleet in this system, that kind of thing. It gives you some intel so you know where to stay away from. And I suggest flagging AWOXers, that's someone who kills their own side. And what you do is you simply flag the whole corp. So if they're in like a pilot, it's not if an NPC corp, I'm not sure you can even do that, but if they're in a pilot corp that is known for AWOXing, just first of all set them as terrible standing, add them as the corp as a contact, set them as terrible standing, and then you need to go into your overview settings, and you can choose the priority of what color people appear as. So by default, even if you put someone as terrible standing, if they're in your militia, that will take precedence. But in the overview settings, you can swap the two. So what you want is that when someone's at a terrible standing, you want them to always appear as being at terrible standing, even if they're the same militia. So you want to know like who the trouble corps are, who the trouble players are, and flag them. The militia chat is good for this. The militia chat will tell you who the known AWOXers and AWOX corps are. And I also suggest flagging what I call tryhards as well. And you know, it's just the thing. There are some people who they're on, you know, very, very blinged out implants, very, very blinged out ships. They're on loads of boosters. You know, they do absolutely everything to push the scales in their favor. And my suggestion is to just flag them and not fight them because, you know, you'll never win. They do this all day, every day. The way to win is to fly away from them, not give them a fight that you know is not going to be fair. Um, People fly force recon ships as well, which don't come up on D-scan because you always want to be doing this when you're plexing. You want to be D-scanning, see who's in the area. Force recon ships won't show up on D-scan, so if someone shoots me in a Curtis, that's usually the one that gets you. I will flag them as being a terrible standing so that when they come into local, I know they're not just in the enemy militia, but they're also someone who's like going to be a pain. You're not going to know that. You're not going to know that they're about to get you, and you can start lining it out. I'm talking about that. You want to learn to run away, so there's no shame in when a fight is not going to be fair. It's a bigger ship, it's a bigger fleet. There's no shame in running away. You want to learn to be able to start aligning out, being aligned to a celestial, so that you can be hovering over the warp out button. So if they warp in, you can warp out. You want to learn to be able to get away effectively. Because again, the more times you can not lose your ship to an unfair fight, the more risk you'll make. Beware mind games. People do stuff like they know that you will warp to a station when their massive fleet comes into the system. Then what they're expecting you to do is 5 minutes later think, oh, they've probably gone. Okay, they're in system, but they're docked up or they've got bored. And what they will do is they will sit 100 kilometers away from the center of that gate in the direction of the station. So when you undock from the station and walk to the gate at 100 kilometers thinking that you're safe, the gate into the Plex, they're 100 kilometers away as well. Then you'll get scrammed and you'll get blown up. So people, you know, these hunters out in the Insurgency and faction warfare, they can be very, very tenacious. Sometimes you just have to go to a different system. When I'm FCing, when we're doing PvP, I can't be bothered with that. When we've lost the element of surprise, I would just rather go to another system. But yeah, people play mind games. But when neutrals as well, you will get like a lot of corps like snuffed out, for example, where they will just shoot anyone in low sec who's not in their own corp. They're not enlisted in militia. In general, neutrals will leave you alone, but not always. There are neutral players who will slide into plexes to get fights. When they do, if they're not enlisted, they'll get a suspect timer, so at least it shows up in low sec. But don't assume just because they're neutral that they might not fight you, because there's a chance they will. So, failing all that, you took this all into account, you check for gate camps, you maybe set up some perches, but you still get caught anyway, caught in a bubble. You get caught in a gate camp, you get scrammed or pointed. What do? So, the first thing to do is try not to panic. Like, yeah, you're probably going to lose your ship. Not the end of the world, but you want to be thinking about who can I take down with me. If there's like 5 ships and one of them's in a T1 frigate, what I'll do is start firing on the T1 frigate, because there's a half a chance I'm able to blow up that ship before I get blown up. So, you know, don't just give up prematurely. And if you've got any tank modules, turn them on, you know, turn your reppers on, overheat your modules. You might, and you know, you really want to overheat, your ship's going to blow up anyway soon, so what's the harm in burning out your modules? So yeah, if you do get caught, fight back. And you never know, if you do fight back, they might think, oh, you know, I don't really want to take on this fight. You know, I'm taking damage, I'm actually, you know, I'm just going to warp off. You never know, they might clear it off. You can, if it's just one other person, if it's just like a solo like hunter has got you, you can just try and get a tackle. So, you know, if maybe they've got a you know, maybe they're in a slower ship if you turn your afterburner on, overheat your afterburner, start lining out to a celestial, you might be able to get a scram range, you might be able to get a point range. If you can pull range from them, then maybe you'll be able to get away. The main point is not to panic. It's chill, just a game at the end of the day, and take the fight. And if you got this far, don't give up prematurely. Take the fight. Do as much damage as you can. That's what I say. So, getting towards the end now. So, like I say, the primary source of rewards out in the Insurgencies is loyalty points. But you want ISK at the end of the day, loyalty points. So how do we turn loyalty points into ISK? So, first of all, you go to the loyalty point store. That's where you exchange loyalty points for stuff. For pirates, you can either go to the forward operating base or Zarzakh, but do keep in mind both of those locations are in, you have to go through low security space, so be careful with that. Empire, it's a bit more convenient because the Empire sides have got LP stores in high sec, so it's a bit safer. Either way, I wouldn't recommend doing any hauling whatsoever on your enlisted character, because your war decked, even high sec, as we know, you can be attacked. People they buy stuff with their enlisted character and then they use a hauler character to actually move the stuff around. That's what I recommend you do. And if you get a T2 hauler, you can use a blockade runner, and they've got a full covert ops cloak, which is awesome. Even as the covert ops frigate, if you're only buying source stuff, covert ops frigate with a full cloak can be. Then you do need Omega for this, by the way, but that can be enough depending on what you're buying from the LP store. There are people who will buy the LP off you. A lot of them are legit, but do be careful because they can be scammers. What essentially they do is that you can't exchange LP in the same way as you do ISK, but they will promise you a certain amount of LP, a certain amount of ISK per LP. You'll dock up at the same station, and they will tell you to buy XYZ from the LP store, and they will exchange it for the rate of ISK that they promised you. So you probably want to use the one who comes recommended for this. So I do through Eve Ruckers, where we do buyback for Garista LP. It's not the best rate. Selling LP never is, but it is quick and convenient, so there's that. But like I say, be careful. Use people that someone else has used. Assuming we're not going to go down the LP selling route and we're going to buy stuff, sell it, take it to Jita or another market, I'd say just take it to Jita, just because it sort of sells a much better volume there. There's this website Fuzzworks which has an LP calculator on there, and what you do is you choose an LP store and it will tell you what the return is for an item. So it will say, okay, for this implant, for each LP you spend on buying the implant, you can make this many thousand ISK back, and that will tell you what is a good margin, because obviously you don't want to lose money, because some things, if they're really crap, they don't sell, or maybe they sell too well and everyone's buying them and the market ends up crashing. You can potentially lose money, so you want to be using stuff, you want to be buying stuff which makes money. And Fuzzworks will this is Fuzzworks' website. It does some other stuff as well, but mostly people use it for the LP store function. Fuzzworks will tell you, but you don't want to just look at the amount of ISK per LP. You want to look at the volume that item sells at, because it's all well and good Fuzzworks saying that in theory, based on the current sell orders, you can make 5,000 ISK per LP, which is an enormous amount. But if that item isn't selling at all, then it's just in theory, no one's buying it. And the volume, you can use something like Eve Tycoon that will tell you the volume, or just literally just the in-game market window. There's another tab next to the tab that shows you the list of buy and sell orders. There's a tab which shows you the volume, and you want to be, for most items, you want to be selling stuff which at least 10, 20 units move per day. Definitely a lot more if there's ammo. If it's ammo, because obviously ammo is going to move in bigger quantities. So what can you buy from the LP store which is nice and easy to sell and has decent returns? Some modules are pretty good. The way that works is you give them the T1 version of that module, and then with LP and a bit of ISK, they give you the faction version. So, for example, you might trade in a standard ballistic control system 1 for a domination ballistic control system. That's the Angel, blingy module brand. There's data cores. People really like data cores. It's dead easy. You just pay your LP, you get data cores, you sell them at Jita, and then they're used in T2 production, or technically invention, but that's obviously a whole other thing. Net resonators, they are only available in the pirate stores at the moment, and Sisters of Eve, because they're kind of considered, in terms of gameplay mechanics rather than lore, like considered as a pirate side. With these net resonators, they are needed in huge numbers to build pirate faction ships. They are kind of like they are the main building material, production material required to build, your alligators and your healers and your mechabals and your macreels and so on. So net resonators, if you're in one of the pirate militias, that's really good. Empire ammo is really good, so your Imperial Navy laser crystals, your Republic fleet, autocannon ammo, your Caldari Navy missiles. They're all really good sellers. Again, needed in absolutely huge quantities. They sell well. Don't buy, if you're in the pirate side, don't buy ammo. The ammo that you get at the Angel and Garista's stores, that is worse than the Empire ammo. There is some other pirate ammo which is actually blingier than the Empire ammo, but that's not available. So just, if you're in Angels or Garista's, ignore the ammo. You don't want it. No one will ever buy it. You'll waste your money. You'll waste your LP on it. Don't do it. Again, if you're in the Empire side, drones are good. So, if you're in Galente, you've got Federation Navy ogres. If you're in Caldari, you've got Navy Hornets. They do well. There aren't any pirate drones, I don't believe, at the moment. So that's just another Empire store thing. And implants as well. Implants can do really well, but just watch out. Remember what I said about volume. Some implants, like the really niche ones, no one's buying them. It's a waste of ISK. But implants which are something like increases capacity by 3%, loads of people are going to be using that. Check. But implants can do really well, and it's dead easy too, because you just buy the implant and sell it. You don't need anything else. Not until you get into kind of the higher end implants anyway. If you're willing to spend a bit more time and effort on this, blueprints will give you better returns for LP. In general, not always, but if you buy a blueprint from the LP store and then build something, then that's going to make you more money than just buying an item and selling it. The reason being, it's just kind of a bit of barrier entry. People can't be bothered. But I think it's worth looking into, because the blueprints that you buy from the LP store. You don't need any special skills. You just need Industry 1, that's it. You don't need to do any inventory or anything like that. You just need to have the blueprint and the building materials. Just don't build it in Jita because the feeds are very high. Build it somewhere a bit further out. That's the only thing. And that's what I do. That's what I spend most of my LP on. I buy ship blueprints and I build ships both for me to use and for me to sell on the market. So if you can be, if you're willing to spend a little bit more time building ships, and you do really need Amiga for this just because of the limited number of manufacturing slots, I'd say go for it. Blueprints will make you more risk than items will. I would say at the moment, your Empire LP is about going to get you about 1,000 to 1,200 ISK per LP. There's going to be exceptions, to this. Maybe there's people that cracked it and making a bit more than that, but in general, that's about right. Angel LP is going to make you about 1,500 ISK per LP. And Garista LP is, I dare say it's the most valuable at the moment. You could realistically make 1,800, 2,000 LP, ISK per LP. The Garista LP is really valuable. The downside of that is the Garista side is a difficult side to be on. There's lots of AWOXs, so you need to know, you need to be keeping tabs on those AWOX courts, you need to keep your head screwed on. It's a very busy war zone, but Garista LP is worth a lot. The Angel Insurgency side, at least on the side of the Pirates, is a lot more gentle. If you want a more chilled out experience, and out of the two pirate sides, I would say join Angels, but yeah, the LP isn't worth quite as much. So, if I may, here's just a quick plug for the Eve Rockies Rabbit Rebellion Corp. So, we live out of Zarzakh. We're open, our fleet's open to anyone listening players. You don't have to be in the Corp. Like I say, you can earn some of the best LP in the game. We live out of Zarzakh. We have ships handouts available, so we have all the logistics sorted out. We've got a really generous SRP that basically covers most of the cost of losing your ships. We'll buy LP off you. We've got a really good community over Eve Rockies, both just in general and with Gristas. We do a weekly fleet at the moment. Sometimes it's more, hopefully it'll be more in future. It kind of sort of waxes and wanes a bit, but we fly at least once a week, and then other times, we might do it more. We see out each other out in Insurgency more casually. We'll provide all the skills and skill plans and fits for you. So if you want to do doctrine ships, then everything's kind of laid out for you, and there's some prizes as well. For your rookies. So each time you join a fleet, you get added to a raffle. Then every month we get people winning ISK and large skill injectors and cerebral accelerators. I won. I know it sounds like a complete fix, but last month I won a large skill injector. It was fair, I promise. So yeah, you might win something as well. If you are interested, if you just go to the Eve Rookies website, there's a tab for faction warfare. And since we're the only side that's active at the moment is the Garistas side, it'll take you straight through to there. And it has all the details about how to, what you need to do to get involved with Eve Rookies Rabbit Rebellion on the Garistas side, because that's who we're enlisted with. So yes, that's the introduction to your subject here, Mr. Slide. Just say introduction to Insurgencies. So yeah, that I was hoping that's taken out, but it's taken a bit longer. So I do apologize for that. Thank you for everyone who held on to the end there. At this point, I just opened this up for any questions if anyone has any.